Okay, cool. Hey, hello everyone, welcome. I'm super happy to be here. It's London, this is where I live, and so it's good, it was kind of convenient, but also it's a really good moment to speak about those lessons, how to maintain, sustainable open source project, because it's kind of like a bit round anniversary for Thanos, because around this time, it was revealed for the first time 5 years ago, right? So it's kind of like around anniversary. And yeah, this is why it's a good moment to maybe share some lessons with you and learn why the Thanos project, grown and still is constantly growing and developing and getting more adoption, and why it didn't, die in the ocean of forgotten open source projects. There are reasons for that, in my opinion, so let's learn. So yeah, in the next 30 minutes, there are 3 things I would like you to know. First of all, we'll talk about sustainability generally and the problems I see as if you want to maintain, right, some open source project. I will quickly introduce Thanos, so you have like a context of what's going on, why I'm even talking about that, and finally we'll move to those promised 7 lessons, right? So let's go. But before that, short introduction. My name is Płotka. I work at Google, and I'm responsible for Google Managed Prometheus in Google Cloud, which has really like a lot of connections and relations to open source. I love open source. I was, really passionate. I am really passionate about that. I love Golang distributed systems and things around observability. I maintain and kind of co-started Thanos project, but I also maintain Prometheus. You might be familiar with that, kind of popular monitoring project in Kubernetes. I also maintain other libraries. And I also mentor, and I'm active in the CNCF. And also, I published a book recently called Efficient Go. But this talk is not about the book, it's about open source, right? And I would love to share with you some lessons how to create sustainable open source. And I mean economically sustainable, because, you can do things for fun, but to really have fun, really, in my opinion, and provide some value to others and maybe, fulfill your goals, you need to make it sustainable. So let me share why. And I think it generally is about love, and you can see it's a kind of like function of maximizing the love. What I mean is that we should this is what kind of works in my opinion. You help others and they help you, but it's not about forcing certain contract, right? Hey, you should help because I help you and there's a transaction, because all those kind of attempts to like force somebody to contribute back and, maybe with license, maybe with, contracts, never works. This is not open source value. Open source value is, again, about, in my opinion, love. I kind of give for free. I don't expect anything, but, ideally you help for free on this project, right? You contribute. So ideally it's about love. So, but I will have more exact kind of tips for you later. But let's talk about, what if project is not sustainable? Like what happens? Like what can grow? What wrong can happen? So, for example, you put your code on GitHub, you open source it. Maybe you just create something from scratch, or maybe you actually build something, internally within your organization, and you decided, okay, here I'm putting all my code upstream on open source in GitHub with like proper license, and then nothing happens, right? Maybe you kind of spend a lot of time and weeks, months, and nothing happens. So can you raise a hand? Have you ever experienced that? Like you put something and nothing happens really. Maybe you expected more. Thank you. Yeah. So don't be shy. Like everybody has that. Like and that's normal. However, in my opinion, there are kind of ways to. Don't be worried about that. Take it, for granted. That's the beginning. That's normal. And there are certain steps that if you follow, there are, high chances of success. And I think it's really about those 2 fundamental mechanisms, economic mechanisms, right? Like demand and supply. We are here, ready to help in open source, do the work, like create the software, do those conferences, whatever. But no one seems to adopt our project. So supply is there, right? But the demand, so like the adoption and stuff, it's not there. So this is where the balance is kind of, again, imbalance now. So there's more supply than demand, and you are unhappy, and it's kind of unhappy state. But there are other risks, right? This is kind of obvious one, and there are kind of like tips I will show how to deal with that. But there are other problems. Like what if you have an opposite thing where like there is more demand than supply, and so for example, like there are tons of users, but no one actually fixing, no one actually helping and contributing into what to maintain. Yeah, and then we have all those problems mentioned before my talk, and like literally today, I think this is like on every presentation today. There's this image. So there are kind of risks around sustainability, security, for example, like someone just not having enough time to really carefully prepare everything. So things are fragile. So that's what can happen. Another risk is around someone emotionally responding to something because maybe the project has only one maintainer who kind of owns things. Everybody depends on that, and then what's happening is that sometimes people make emotional decisions and break the whole internet, right? And that was the case in 2016 with certain JavaScript package. Anyway, it was like kind of like small incident, personal incident, but at the end it kind of exposed a huge problem and blocked many bigger projects. Yeah, and I don't think we should blame anyone here other than actual users not proactively helping within this project and maybe sharing some responsibility, sharing some ownership, right? So this is not sustainable. And again, demand higher than supply. And finally, of course, the license kind of rapid movements. This is also a sign when maybe some companies who solely own certain projects feel they are kind of, everybody is using their project for free, and they suddenly make those movements with a license. And again, it stops being kind of about this helping others. It's starting more to be like, oh, it's transaction. I'm helping others, and you are forced to help me with certain combination of licenses. And that's a huge harm. But what's really the most harmful is, and we'll talk about that, is doing that during lifetime of the project. So if the project starts and there is some license, that's fine. But then if it changes over time, then you are really like unfair for everybody. So, and this is because things are unsustainable. So again, you can learn more about those things from Flores. I just, I really got inspired by all of those things from her, and like there's amazing kind of blog post and talk she made around those issues, and with some details. And I really recommend to check her work out. But today we'll talk about Thanos and how I feel this sustainability is roughly balanced. And what we kind of want, in my opinion, is this, right? Is to have an equal, not too much demand, not enough supply. So, and you will notice kind of this balance later on, but this is what we'll be focusing in this talk. And I want to put one more hypothesis into this. Maybe you will agree with me. I think the people can have multiple motivations why they start contributing or why they start creating something in open source. But non-malicious, I would say, motivations. And I think it doesn't matter what motivation you have. Like, you can still make sustainable software. So it's not like one motivation is not sustainable. It really depends how you do it, the quality of it, and the processes you are kind of combining and adding. You can still achieve your goals, right? No matter if you just want to help or you are actually monetizing part of this, I don't know, ecosystem, right? Okay, so what has Thanos to do with all of this with open source? So I think a lot, actually, right? So Thanos is essentially, a project is a kind of, bunch of code, a lot of code actually, written in Go mostly, and it has its website. It's kind of like one repository. It's Apache 2 license, so it's open source, and yeah, like functionally, maybe you are familiar with Prometheus system, and I maintain Prometheus as well. And you can think about Thanos, and again, Prometheus is just a monolith, right? It's, which means it's like one binary doing all of this amazing stuff about monitoring. And Thanos is really functionally the same. It has exactly the same requirements, just focus on those 4 blocks. We kind of distribute them into microservices. And again, this talk is not about understanding what those services are doing. I want to understand roughly where the project is and what it solves, what value it provides, because it matters, right? So there are some bunch of microservices, and of course, generally, we wanted to do this, right? We wanted to kind of split the server and for scalability purposes into microservices. That's not always easy, as you can see, right? And we are really trying to be on this left side expectations. And by the way, like some people, like I seen this kind of meme somewhere, like animation, and people were commenting about that, like really why this watermelon actually didn't behave like it should. And apparently, like if you cut this top, right, this is the kind of like important part. And someone like kind of compared that to when would you design or like do the split of monorepo or like monolith, service into microservices. This represents planning, upfront planning. So this cutting up top, and so people like take it really seriously. I think it's really relevant. And yeah, hopefully Thanos is more on those expectation sides. Okay, and I think, yeah, the kind of what I want to share is that we have, some, first of all, supply. So this is, kind of like stable graph of number of contributions from different companies, different developers. What matters is just stable. Yeah, of course, there's a hype moment and then maybe less, but I think it's fairly stable, and that's what matters. We also have, this demand part. So a lot of companies are using, and some of them are on our website. Most of them are not on our website. So if you're using Thanos, let us know. Ideally, if you want to show some logo and support us. Even big tech is using us. So the point is, we have the kind of like some kind of demand and some kind of supply. And just as a kind of like timeline, how it was created, just to understand, just you can understand maybe the background and the context. It started with the problem, right? It actually started, it's not a random, Thanos is not a random idea. It had kind of the vision. So someone in 2017, we had this problem of scaling Prometheus, and we tried different, different solutions, different alternatives. But at the end, it was about really a crazy guy called Fabian who thought about this cool idea of a design that is working on top of object storage, so it's kind of cheaper and that it's easy to scale. And we kind of hook up I was working at that point at Improbable, like UK startup, and we kind of like had this problem. So we reached him and we kind of contracted together, and we started to work on this, right? And Fabian created a design doc around like 2017, and we started to collaborate on all of this, like Fabian and me, and that was the starting point. And what matters is that kind of it was already Apache 2 from the start. This is like the first commit, for example, and we started like coding remotely actually. And the first thing that kind of what we did after those 3 months of coding, we kind of finished the MVP, so something that you can deploy and it can actually distribute and work on object storage. And we wanted to reveal that. And honestly, lots of things I learned from Fabian because I was kind of like junior at that point, right? And I was kind of surprised that he kind of like pushed this code forward. Then it's not like he we kind of like usually also software was like still doing because it's never perfect. You don't want to release it. No, release it and show it and announce it, right? So we announced it with blog posts, with kind of like Prometheus London meetup, and then we actually started organizing those meetup as well, helping that. But generally, that was the first moment where we, announced Thanos. This is like the photo of Fabian, me, and Mark, who also worked at Improbable, was consulting us. I cropped the photo. There are lots of whiskey bottles, but don't tell anyone. But that was the moment of reveal, so we were kind of celebrating. And yeah, that was the first meetup. And it was in Cloudflare office. Again, amazing people, hosted us. And we didn't expect this kind of, demand, I would say, right? And then maybe there were other conferences, but like the biggest was Cloud Native London, amazing conference as well, before pandemic happening. And there was the first moment where we have swag, 4 t-shirts. We had 4 t-shirts, yeah, because the budget was kind of, limited. But we have lots of stickers, right? So, this kind of fun, social fun is kind of important within those projects. Again, to share, to bring awareness, and I will reveal some of this in the lessons. And then after we joined, not Avengers, we actually joined CNCF. And this is the moment where we kind of donated the project into the organization, the foundation, Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And it's important, right? Because then, again, I will mention later why it's important, but it was really good. And then afterwards, we kind of promoted, we got promoted to like second stage because again, every project in CNCF is either sandbox, incubated, or graduated stage. So we kind of like, given the demand, but also supply, so given how sustainable we are, we got awarded with this new stage. And really, that's kind of like important part, just to, for you to have some awareness. So yeah, let's move to those lessons. Enough of the memories. So, okay, I don't want you to take the impression that, Thanos is all about conferences and fun and whiskey and social things. No, it's actually a lot of work, right? But, of course, on the photos, we only did capture those. But we want to kind of understand, ideally, like what work, how to shape the work to get some sustainable software in open source. And let's go through those 7 lessons. And again, disclaimer, I'm kind of in the infrastructure domain. There might be, I think those rules apply to web development and maybe kernel and maybe any other kind of areas. But take in mind that we are talking about cloud native ecosystem mostly. So you can kind of like put that into context. Yeah, let's go. So first one, out of 7, provide value. It's kind of simple, right? But then we kind of have fun, we kind of have, we put this project, we put our hard work out in the open and we don't see a demand, right? Sometimes it's as simple as this. It's not valuable enough. Maybe it was valuable for our use case, which is very limited. And maybe we didn't thought about other use cases. So it's really, I think, the number one thing. And create useful things. Try to have them useful not only for your organization but for others. And we're kind of lucky that we fit other problem space, other people problem space, not only ours, like improbable problems, so the startup problem space. So, even since now, like 2022, so kind of fresh year ago, someone was like, there every year some blog posts about why we chose Thanos, and they kind of outline, the reasons. So you could learn what value we provide. So people, are willing to use our software, but also contribute. Yeah. So again, value, and maybe that's trivial, but think about value. And I want to just highlight that it's not simple. Like creating an idea or like maybe idea for a good open source software takes time. I mean, this is just maybe, 5, but I have like, I don't know how many, like hundreds of different GitHub, repositories. And most of them are not even, have high traffic, maybe are used by a couple of people, couple of companies. But, it's again like with startup, right? Like you're creating startup, not maybe one of 100 kind of actually work and is succeeding and is sustainable, right? So the same with open source software. Sometimes it's about maybe trying different idea, maybe shaping it in a different way, maybe, trying something and learn as well, right? And a lot of time you fail. Actually, you fail more than you succeed. But don't give up. Always try hard. And you could see before starting Thanos, I was kind of experimenting with different projects, and I wanted all of them to be sustainable, but I had to learn how, right? So don't give up. And again, how to be more valuable? You listen, you adapt, you adjust, right? You kind of listen to user feedback, what they want, what's most important, because you don't have supply, you don't have kind of power of creating everything for everyone. You have to be kind of scoped down. And, one way to do it is to kind of have an open issue board, and then, there's on GitHub, there's like a cool option to sort by emojis, and really emojis are a good enough way to understand people's feedback, but you have to teach your community how to do that, right? You need to teach your community, your user to, hey, if you want something, give us +1, right? Because I see so many so many projects that say, don't give +1 or like comment because you are polluting. I mean, sure, that's why emojis are amazing. They're not polluting that much, but you need to have a way to listen to people in a synchronous way, ideally. Of course, there are synchronous, you can have meetings, you can, tell me now, today, what do you want from Thanos? But, all of this is better to keep kept in one place. And yeah, emojis are fine for that. Second lesson, do one thing and do it well. We know this statement from Linux paradigm, let's say. So make each program do one thing well, to do a new job, ideally build fresh rather than compile old programs by avoiding new features. That's maybe brutal a little bit, but if you take this in a way that tells you to kind of like scope down the potential features to like really limit it to have like one kind of one common goal of the project. This is really important, and it's kind of key to maintaining this this balance, right? Because if you would try to kind of like maybe put too many features, then you kind of put demand maybe people start to use different features and they are kind of like spread across different functionalities, maybe authorization in the Thanos system, maybe, I don't know, like additional debugging, additional something. And at this point you are putting this demand higher than supply because you are not growing the maintainers and contributor team fast enough, right? And I had the talk about, again, you could have another talk just about like deciding what should I merge, what should I reject in your contributions, right? As a maintainer, if someone want to kind of add or ask for new features. But again, you can summarize, I mean, the key lesson is that, be okay to reject things, right? It's sometimes much more, as a maintainer, it's hard, right? But you have to reject things to not put yourself on the spot where you cannot even, you are overwhelmed, or as a team you are overwhelmed, right? So for example, like in this case, we, as a Thanos, is like a binary or like microservices in a cloud native ecosystem, so you can deploy them on Kubernetes, and people want those kind of additional integrations to, I don't know, authorization, because maybe you are using Vault, which is like secret database for secrets, right? So maybe there's a cool integration where maybe when someone reaches Thanos UI, we will kind of contact this Vault and get authorization, blah, 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 everything. Or maybe when Thanos talks to other services, we kind of get the secret to make this call, right? And this is great, but there are unlimited number almost of those new AUF databases, and we are not specialists, like our team is not specialists at security, right? So adding those bits, we can add them slowly, one by one, and really if many people will want that. But if you would accept all of those, you will get overwhelmed, you'll have security issues, and you will be fighting with like client on OAuth 2 and not actual monitoring and database like we're supposed to, right? So we are rejecting, and only recently we added this HTTPS like basic authentication, and only because Prometheus have it, right? And that maybe some people are like, oh, this is like blocking adoption. No, because we are enabling that via do it yourself, so essentially through plugins, integrations. And it's super easy to just add Envoy, proxy, or Nginx into your stack with Thanos and have every possible authentication, because they are specialized, right? They know Envoy is really specialized in those kind of integrations, and you can you can be unblocked. So really understand what is the real blocker for a project and what is something that somebody can do elsewhere. And this is example from our Thanos API. We kind of built an API that we use for retrieving data. So you can actually add your plugin for retrieving data from different database, and it kind of merges as this kind of monitoring query that you can see, that you can fetch metrics from Prometheus, from Thanos, from object storage, from, I don't know, from another universe, from maybe vendor even, and you can totally build yourself. It doesn't mean we will host this code, right? So enable flexibility, enable plugins, enable things that will unblock people, but doesn't necessarily kind of like put everything into your onto your back. And yeah, of course, the best way to maintain some easy, to be kind of like have least work possible is to leverage others, right? So this is why we really import Prometheus code. We have the same APIs as a Prometheus because, if we start to create the Thanos project and we start to create our own custom API to kind of, so users can kind of retrieve data from the system, or maybe a different UI, we would get overwhelmed because we have to maintain all of those things. And maybe this API will be specialized to Thanos, so it'd be maybe nicer, maybe we have cool ideas, but keeping things standard is just so much easier, right? Because otherwise you are creating, and you think your standard will be the most kind of standard thing in the end. And I'm talking about everything like configuration, just network APIs and so on, or data format, right? No, Thanos has exactly the same data format as Prometheus, the same API, the same UI, with small extensions, but generally built on top of shoulders of others, right? To do that, it's helpful. Value or lesson number 3 is about long-term goals, right? You don't want to focus on kind of short-term, gains. And what I mean is that you kind of want to wait for things. Sometimes, maybe your feature, maybe something that you thought was useful is not, right? And you cannot just force things to be adopted. You sometimes have to wait for this organic growth, right? And that also means don't oversell, because it's very tempting to say, yeah, Thanos is for everything. Yeah, yeah, totally. Like someone, because maybe you are afraid to block others. Maybe, kind of you want to satisfy them in the short term and maybe accept some features which are totally not aligned with scope of your project. This is totally wrong. Like it's kind of like the way to a failure, right? So yeah, we could say, hey, store in Thanos everything. It's a metric system, right? And store logs, traces, profile, and everything. And honestly, functionally you could make that happen, but that would overwhelm the community. So again, don't do anything that grows demand too much, so the supply cannot catch up. Okay, one of the most important parts, build trust, right? You want your project to be sustainable, so you want to show that it will not change too much. So of course, start with some license, try to agree on what values you have within the open source, how you want to kind of like deal with that later. Try to not change them over time, right? That's the worst what can happen. Thanos was always Apache 2, and we kind of like dedicated to that because we actually donated to the CNCF. But some projects don't, and it's super blocking everyone if you have those kind of changes. And I can tell you, like, even if you have AGPL, which is kind of like open source by open source definition kind of foundation, it's kind of open source apparently license. But again, even I was working for Red Hat like 3 years, and we are also open source company. We love open source. We do everything in public. And yet we were scared to use AGPL because of some kind of needs and small things, and we didn't even know. No lawyer could really explain us if we were like sign that we are safe to use it. There's so many frictions in open source normally. Don't put another friction, right? Of course. And of course, maybe you have a reason, maybe some monetization. But again, changing license to like contract somebody to do this is not going to help. Like, you will block others. So make sure you have a license. Make sure you don't change them too often, or never actually. Another part is open governance, right? So have a clear governance, which means some kind of like contract. How do you maybe make decisions in the team, make changes, maybe add, maybe remove somebody if you have to. So this is where we are kind of proud of this, and the same. Other projects are doing the same. Our open governance in Thanos means that, for example, you have multiple maintainers from different companies, but when there is a vote, only maximum 2 from the same company are counted, right? So even if there are like 4 people from Red Hat and 2 people, from Google, then our votes are kind of the same. And the same with like maybe 1 maintainer from some other company. So kind of it incentivizes to no group has like majority votes on everything, which is kind of controversial. Some projects are saying, okay, this is unfair because some companies are contributing more and paying more. So there is some discussion, but I believe this works so far very well for Thanos. Again, consider joining foundation. I kind of mentioned that we joined CNCF, and this is because we want to build a trust. We want to make sure that customers or like users of our product are not afraid that we'll change the license, change something, and disappear. This doesn't mean that we cannot disappear. There are certain cases in the CNCF where maybe some project got, kind of like abandoned in some way, but generally it's better than nothing. And again, sometimes if you want to deprecate something, if you want to actually, you lose daily interest, there is no enough supply, be transparent about those. Be transparent that you are making certain changes and certain project will be not supported. For example, in open tracing, because OpenTelemetry was created, another project, we have a nice banner, we have documentation how to migrate if, maybe this is kind of easy example because there was kind of like a new project replacing it, but sometimes it's like, yep, nothing replaces it. And maybe we're open for new maintainers that would like to own this, right? So be transparent. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we want to try a different thing to provide value, but at least be transparent, right? And focus on your dependencies. Of course, I mentioned this, this JavaScript library, so that caused all the problems. Look how easy the code is. Like it's a couple of, it's not easy, but it's only 11 lines of code that you could just copy. And so I'm super surprised that somebody would import such small functionality and not copy it with, of course, copyright and the proper license, right? And this is why I love Go, because one of the proverbs in this programming language, and Thanos is written in Go, out of many, one of them is a little copying is best than a little dependency. And this is super important because, again, if this little dependency causes problems and you don't own this code, right, you are responsible for that. So try to minimize the number of dependencies always, try to check them. Ideally, you have some scanners for license changes and so on, because as a project, you are responsible for that. All right, number 5, awareness. Again, you put the project out on GitHub. You are kind of expecting, some traffic, and there is nothing. Why? Well, mostly it's because no one knows about that, right? So you have to, somebody say, sell it. In my opinion, that's kind of wrong word for that. In open source, I would rather say we bring awareness, and the best way to do this is by helping others, right? So not like putting in your face, hey. Use it because it's amazing. No, is reaching the people who has this problem, for example, they cannot scale Prometheus properly, and say, look, this is the steps, you can do it, right? And this works. And this is why after those kind of revealing the Prometheus London meetup, over the year we built kind of a team who was, and actually we pull in contributors as well to make some talks about Thanos and tutorials and so on. And we have Slack full of like 4,000 people who not only are there to just consume things and ask questions, but also to answer them. And that's kind of super important to maintain, to like really be productive and help others. And this will organically grow your the awareness of people that your project is there and what it helps with and why you should choose it, right? Again, avoid aggressive advertisement. There are many cases when you see blog posts. Oh, the most scalable like monitoring solution, and sometimes the data, sometimes it's not true. You can actually, we have somebody saying that some project has like 1 billion series scalability. I mean, we have customers with 1.5 scale, kind of number, whatever, and we could have a blog post saying, okay, we have 1.5. Of this project scalability. It's like, of course we could do that, but that's not fair. I mean, it's not nice, and you should totally avoid that. Be patient. People will understand what's kind of like overhyped, it's kind of like fake, and is real, and show the value. This is what matters. So totally, don't worry about those. Focus on the long-term goals. Okay, 2 last values: innovation, right? So try to bring new things into ecosystem and have fun, of course, on the way, right? So for example, like it was pretty novel to put object storage as a database storage, right? It's super simple. It's cheap, extremely cheap. So you can store unlimited retention of like metrics, really for cheap. The only problem is like a little bit slower than other databases, but given, you know, like technology improvement, that's good enough. So that was kind of new, and then after that, other projects started to also support object storages. So that was kind of nice, one innovation. Second is like we are kind of expanding our PromQL engine, so we're writing Prometheus, whatever PromQL engine, which kind of like computes things into distributed manner. Again, some example that I personally have fun, not only that is useful, but also I was learning something. And again, even little thing like maybe auto-generated documentation because it was tedious, right? So we created like an ndocs project, whatever, but at the end, it is you know, helping and kind of innovating in the space. And last value, and super important, it's all about the people, right? So at some point, I was kind of like depressed. I don't think it was like clinically depression, but I was essentially alone sometimes. I feel I was alone in the Thanos, like owned because I kind of started it. Fabian moved to another company, and I was kind of like, all those issues, you know, hundreds of people have questions to me. I cannot even answer all of them. And really the goal, the kind of like key concept that helped me then is to find a team and share responsibility, right? This is where I moved companies. I joined Red Hat, where we used as a team Thanos, and then, you know, we started to kind of bring other maintainers and put some responsibility on them. And it's super crucial, right? It kind of helped me to kind of recover and be happy again and not stress too much. So you are not alone. You can kind of bring other people into this journey and be proactive about that, right? Delegate, push people. There are so many cases where there was for example, like a meeting, a conference, a talk to be made on KubeCon, for example, and you know, I literally asked contributor, not even maintainer, hey, do you want to do it with me? And it was like a first talk, for example, right, of them, and they were like, I don't know, yeah, I cannot, but I was kind of pushing, and not too much, of course, within some boundaries, but I kind of, yeah, I think I enabled some people, and they started to enable others. It's kind of like a chain effect. And again, we have amazing diversity, not only team, but also contributions. And you know, some of the speakers you will see speaking about Thanos, it's not me anymore. It's, you know, some people that I kind of mentored. So try to push people out of this comfort zone sometimes. And be thankful, right? Like every maintainer is different, every path to being a maintainer is different, so be mindful about their passions, about their goals, and we are proud to have grateful to have 500 contributors over those 5 years. And again, it was really because we were thankful for everything. Even if you put issue, if you comment on issue only, even if sometimes it's not appropriate, maybe someone was lost or confused, don't judge, like just say thank you and be thankful, right? And the kind of last thing is mentoring. There are lots of cool programs, mentoring programs, and we mentored within Thanos and Prometheus so many people. I think in this channel, private channel, Thanos Mentees, we have 40 people almost. Most of them are mentees that we were mentoring. Some of them kind of we hired. Some of them are part of the project. And so really go, even at some point we go to this github.com CNCF mentoring, because there are essentially programs, especially in the as you are, if you want to participate in some CNCF project, there are so many programs, amazing programs around LFX, so kind of Linux Foundation, 3 times a year maintainerships, like that you can kind of perform, and GSOC, Google Summer of Code. And we got really productive there, I think. We have our meetups after each mentorship, so new kind of people in the community can share what they learned. We also have some processes like retrospective and kind of like tips. So welcome to visit this. And if you want to mentor, please let me know. I would like to help you. I would like to hook you into these meetups as well, so you can mentor proactively. And every project should do that, honestly. So do it. And yeah, that's it. Thank you. We have seven lessons today, and again, it's about the balance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to the next speaker, I think we'll just have time for a couple of quick questions. Who has a question? Somebody? Anyone? Oh, come on. Must be something. There's a question. Brilliant.
Thank you for the talk. If you had to do something differently in the beginning, like 5 years ago when you started Thanos, what would you do differently?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I would, I would already implemented all those improvements or like the things I already know about, right? No, but that's impossible. But from the processes, yeah, I would put more on myself. Like I would understand my limits, right? Like how much time I can spend, how much effort I can do. So I will limit the goals, right? I would kind of try to say no to certain features before we have bigger team to deal with them, and not get distracted by maybe somebody being sad about that, right? You have to maintain your own balance and start to grow the team and delegate and kind of mentor others. Only then you can put more work on yourself. So I think that would be, well, that's easier than that's harder than it feels.
One more question? Great.
First of all, that was a nice talk. So I just wanted to know, like, how do you balance your time, like managing all of those things? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. And I will expose you because you are Thanos mentee. So here we are. Good question. How do I balance things? Well, again, it's about really trying to find also a job that aligns with maybe some open source goals, right? I at some point moved jobs to have more time, right? Because if you have a big project like this, and I was leading that, and being able to lead that, but also you are leading maybe some topics, and I was SRE at that point, that was kind of going outside of observability, outside of monitoring, then you cannot fully go into this, right? So of course I have to align my work goals or like my employer goals to maybe this. So thanks of that, I was able to do more within the observability and Thanos. And now I recently moved to Google, and I'm also kind of in Google Managed Prometheus, also connected to monitoring, also connected to open source. So I kind of will be able to fulfill those things and balance that out. So I think it's very unreasonable and hard to, I will, fully maintain, for example, Prometheus project when you move to blockchain, right? I mean, yes, you can, but then it's much harder, right? So try to align your goals with whatever you do, right? And perhaps maybe there are some parts of, that's hypothetically, right? You go to blockchain and there are parts of Thanos that maybe require blockchain, then you can kind of focus on those things, but try to, you have only 24 hours, and try to align those things together, and then that's the best effect you can have, in my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you for the questions. Wonderful talk. Round of applause for Bartek.